I'm Carol from Sunbury, Ohio.
I'm a Republican, but I don't care who does the job as long as the job gets done. That's why I like Sherrod Brown. He stood up to both parties on China and worked with Republicans to fight fentanyl because Sherrod fights for Ohio. That's leadership.
Paid for by friends of Sherrod Brown.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Two-Footed Podcast here on EPL Index. Now, before we kick things off today, I just want to share something with everybody. This episode is brought to you by our partners at Sky Bet. We've teamed up with Sky Bet because they truly understand what it means to be a fan. Sky Bet appreciates the length that people go to support their team in all areas, whether you're a match-going fan or otherwise, and there's just no better fit for us right now than a partnership with the good folks at Sky Bet. So with that said, let's go. What's good, boys and girls? Two-Footed Podcast. Today is Friday. It is October the 4th. Hope you've all had a very nice week. I am back now to annoy you all. Weather update, minging. Minging is the only word for it. Right, today's episode is brought to you by Sky Bet. And with that in mind, we're going to have a quick look at what you can expect in the EFL Sky Bet Championship, League 1 and League 2. EFL Sky Bet or Sky Bet EFL? Sky Bet EFL. Anyway, right, let's get into it. So, tonight in the Championship, Sunderland against Leeds United. This one should be a belter. Sunderland are top. Leeds are 5th. 3 points separate them. Sunderland's form has been a little bit choppy the last couple of games. 3 wins, 2 draws. Leeds, 3 wins, 1 draw. 3 wins, 2 defeats for Sunderland. 3 wins, 1 draw, 1 defeat for Leeds. So, should be fairly evenly matched. Big expectations for both this season. I think particularly Leeds, given they were expected to go up last season. They didn't. They were expected, I think, to win the league comfortably this year. They may still do that, but as things stand, it hasn't been a flawless start for Leeds United. 4 wins, 3 draws and 1 defeat in their opening 8 games. 12:30 on Saturday, Norwich against Hull. Norwich are 10th, Hull are 9th. Both of them a fair mixed bag. Burnley versus Preston, obviously big pressure on Burnley to go up this year as well. They currently sit in 2nd place, while Preston are down in 21st. And then Portsmouth against Oxford United. Portsmouth are 23rd. They haven't won yet this season. They're the only team in the Championship who haven't won yet this season. Oxford are sitting in 11th. Obviously, both of them promoted from League 1 last season. Oxford have adapted much quicker. They have 11 points to Portsmouth's 4. So, moving on then to the 3 p.m. kickoffs on Saturday, of which there are 7. Swansea versus Stoke. Swansea currently sitting in 12th, Stoke in 15th. Should be a decent mid-table game. Watford against Middlesbrough. Watford are 8th. They had started really well. They've gotten a bit shaky. Borough started a little bit disappointingly, but have now turned things around and are up to 7th. So that's a good one. Good Championship playoff kind of battle there. Sheffield United against Luton, 2 of the teams relegated from the Premier League last season. Sheffield United are 3rd. They're unbeaten. They're the only unbeaten team in the division. Luton are 20th. Only 2 wins thus far from 8 games. So, potential there for more pressure to be put on Luton, who I thought would be good this year, given how they went about things. I thought they were setting themselves up to be quite good this year, and maybe Rob Edwards becomes the most under pressure manager in the league if they lose this one. Derby against QPR. Derby are currently sitting in 14th. QPR are 22nd in a 24-team league. Only one win so far, but they are tough enough to beat. That one should be a fairly solid game. Derby don't do draws. They either win or they lose. Plymouth against Blackburn Rovers. Plymouth are in 18th under Wayne Rooney. Blackburn have had a good start to the season. They're up in 6th. West Brom then against Millwall. West Brom are 4th. They have been top a couple of times this season. Millwall sits 16th. And then Coventry against Sheffield. Wednesday, a nice 90s era Premier League tussle for a nostalgia merchant like myself. Coventry are the most disappointing team for me this season. They sit in 17th in the Championship. Sheffield Wednesday sit in 19th. So both teams desperately in need of points there. And then Sunday at 3 p.m, it is Bristol City against Cardiff City. Bristol are 13th. Cardiff are bottom, but did get their first win of the season last time out, and they'll be hoping that can spark them into a bit of a run of form. They need to start picking up more points, as do Portsmouth, because there's already a 4-point gap to Preston, who are in the 21st spot, the last survival spot. You don't want a big gap opening up ahead of you, or it does become more and more difficult to close that gap. Likewise, for teams like Coventry, I mean, they're 7 points off the playoffs as things stand. It is only 8 games in, I understand. But you still don't want that gap to grow, because there's only a certain number of games where you're going to be able to turn it around. Looking forward to this weekend in the Championship. I think there's some really good games there. League One, tomorrow, 12:30. Huddersfield take on Barnsley. Huddersfield are 15th, very disappointing. 4 straight defeats coming into this one. Barnsley are sitting in 7th, so they'll be happy enough with how things are going. And Peterborough versus Stevenage. Peterborough are in 16th. Stevenage are one of the surprise packets this season, I think, in League One, sitting in 9th. Then we get Exeter City versus Cambridge. Exeter are 10th. Cambridge dead bottom, 1 point, haven't won yet. They just look a class below the rest. They look like a team destined for relegation this season. Mansfield against Blackpool. Mansfield have made a great start. They currently sit in 3rd. But Blackpool doing really well under Steve Bruce, currently sitting in 6th, unbeaten in their last 5 league games. Burton Albion against Bristol Rovers. Burton are 22nd. They have not won a game yet this season. And Bristol Rovers are 18th. They won their last time out after 4 straight defeats. So big game for Burton. They have to get a win here. Bolton against Shrewsbury. Bolton have had a good turnaround after a bad start. They've won their last 3 games. They've moved themselves up to 11th. They're moving in the right direction after what was a rough start. It was good to see them stick with the manager, because a lot of clubs would have jumped ship. This is another opportunity for them to get 3 points against the Shrewsbury team that are 23rd in the division with just 1 win so far this season. Wycombe against Crawley. Wycombe are 8th. They're unbeaten in their last 5. Crawley, no wins in their last 5, sitting in 21st. Wrexham against Northampton Town. Wrexham are 2nd. Obviously, back-to-back promotions. 3 promotions in a row is a big ask. It's a big ask. But there is a level of expectation because of the level of celebrity of their owners, because of the coverage that they've had. But so far, they've answered the questions. They're sitting in 2nd. They have lost 2 of the last 5, so they'll want to keep or to get back to winning more consistently. But, you know, as things stand, they'll be happy enough. Northampton currently sitting 19th. This should be a Wrexham win. Stockport against Wigan Athletic. Stockport in 5th. They got their first win at the weekend after 4 without a win. So good to see them back to form, hopefully. And then Wigan, also been disappointing this season, but they are turning things around. 2 wins and 3 draws in their last 5. after 1 win and 4 defeats in their first 4, 1 win and 3 defeats in their first 4. So good to see them back on track. That one should be a good game. 2 teams, I think, with promotion ambition. Lincoln City against Leyton Orient. Lincoln are 4th and flying. Leyton Orient are 20th. That one should be a Lincoln win, you would imagine, but you just don't know in the lower leagues. Rotherham against Reading. Rotherham obviously got relegated from the Championship last year, and they haven't adapted all that well to League One, but they did win last time out, which was their first win after 4 without a win. Taking on a Reading team who sometimes you watch them, they look like a class above. Sometimes you watch them, you think they might be in trouble this year. They sit 12th in the league. They have won back-to-back games, though, so that's promising for them. And then finally, Charlton versus Birmingham. Charlton down in the mid-table in 13th position, 3 defeats in a row. Birmingham are top, unbeaten thus far, 5 wins in a row. They look set to cruise through this division, which, to be fair, given the money they spent in the summer, they have to. They have to. If it's even close with them and the team in second, that'll be a disappointment for them because they've spent so much more than anybody else. They spent more than the entirety of League One and League Two put together. They spent more than any Championship team. So they have to stroll through this division this year. So yeah, it should be a good weekend in League One. And then finally, League Two, we have Grimsby against Doncaster. Doncaster currently sitting in 5th. Grimsby are 8th. That one should be good. Grimsby've won 3 in a row as well. They come in form. Fleetwood against Bromley. Fleetwood are sitting in 6th. Unbeaten in the last 4. 3 wins in those games. Bromley are 19th. That one should be a Fleetwood win. Chesterfield against Walsall. No, not Walsall. Yes, Walsall. Walsall are 3rd. Doing very well. Did lose last time out, but they'll be confident going on the road and getting a win against 10th place Chesterfield. Crewe against Gillingham. So Crewe are currently sitting in 12th. They had won 4 in a row, but they lost last time out. They hadn't won a game before that run of 4 straight wins, but they managed to vault themselves up the table. Gillingham are top, but did lose last time out. That one should be an interesting game. There's not a ton that separates teams. Like, you've got Crewe in 12th. They're only 6 points behind Gillingham after 9 games. There's not a ton in this at the moment. We're not getting a lot of separation. Accrington Stanley against Morecambe. This is the bottom 2. Neither of them have won a game so far. Aki are bottom, but they've played a game less. They do have a worse goal difference. That feels like a draw. It just stinks of a draw. Swindon Town against Harrogate. Swindon are 21st and Harrogate are 18th. I don't think that's going to be a particularly good game, personally. Notts County against Port Vale. I like this one. There's just a bit of history about this game. 2 very important clubs that it's good to see in the Football League and doing well. Notts County are 2nd. Port Vale are 7th. Salford against AFC Wimbledon, the 2 most unlikable teams in the division. Salford are 20th. No, sorry. Salford against AFC Wimbledon. I was thinking MK Dons. One of the most unlikable against one of the most likable. That's what I should have said. Salford are 20th. AFC Wimbledon are 11th. But again, only 6 points off top. So they've also got 3 games in hand. They've got 3 games in hand because their stadium obviously can't be used at the moment. So I think AFC Wimbledon are in pretty good shape this year. Colchester against Carlisle. Colchester are 15th. Carlisle are 22nd. Colchester should win that one at home. Barrow against Cheltenham. Barrow started really well. They're currently sitting in 4th, but they have lost their last 2 games. Cheltenham are 16th. Then we get the other unlikable team, MK Dons. They're sitting in 14th, and they take on Tranmere, who sit in 17th. And finally then Bradford City against Newport County. Bradford are 13th. Newport are 9th. Newport have won back-to-back games, though, so they'll come in slightly better form. But there's not a whole lot between them in the table, only 3 points. And Bradford actually have the better goal difference. So, again, should be some fun in League 2 this weekend. Not going to do the conference this weekend, but we are, of course, going to check in on the great man, Big Dunk, Inverness Caledonian Thistle, away to Arbroath. Both teams have 9 points, sitting in the mid-table. Inverness are 6th, Arbroath are 7th. Inverness have a goal difference of 0. Arbroath is -1. Arbroath have won 2 games. Inverness have only won 1, but Inverness have only lost 1, while Arbroath have lost 3. Anyone fancy the draw? It just feels like a draw. Inverness, if you look back at recent fixtures, a draw with Stenhousemuir, a draw with Cove Rangers, a draw with Alloa Athletic. They did win back-to-back games. They beat Stirling Albion and they beat Queen of the South. But before that, it was a draw with Kelty Hearts, a draw with Montrose, and they lost at Annan Athletic after a draw with Dunbarton. Yeah. Big Dunk. Some boy. Arbroath this weekend, Livingston next weekend, then Annan Athletic, then Dunbarton again. How long does he last? Does he last the season? Can he bore his way to a mid-table finish with, let's just say, 25 draws and an equal number of wins and losses and a goal difference of 0, finishing somewhere between 5th and 7th? Seems like a Big Dunk thing to do. 4th and 7th, maybe. Maybe he gets them to 4th. But they're already 5 points off top, 8 games in. And they are what they are. They're the draw specialists of the division. Right, back after the break, joined by Mr. Guy Drinkle. Right, welcome back. So, joined as always on a Friday by Guy Drinkle. How are you, sir?
It's a nice day.
Is it?
It is up here.
Oh, it's minging here.
I only had to wear a fleece on the dog walk.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. It's not a particularly nice weekend of Premier League football. There's not a raft of games that you'd be looking forward to.
And that's it for today's show.
We'll see it's on Monday.
Yeah, I think you're right there. But we do start off with probably one of the more interesting ones because there is a few narratives and historical narratives. But I'm sure you'll dispel them in a sec because I've seen your Twitter and your other show I did earlier. But Crystal Palace hosting Liverpool, often called the bogey team. Liverpool in good form. Post that Forest, I was going to swear there, post that Forest mess up. And Palace, it's just been a really weird season with a really blunt attack and a kind of understandably mixed up defence because, well, he got ripped apart and then injuries and so on. But yeah, well, what do you make of this game?
Yeah, I mean, Palace are seen as the bogey team for Liverpool. And you know, there is some substance to that because they have gotten results against Liverpool over the years. And there have been spells where they've won, say, 3 out of 4 games against Liverpool. But if we go back historically, end of the 13-14 season, there's the 3-3 draw. Then they beat Liverpool early in the 14-15 season at Selhurst Park with Yannick Bolasie embarrassing Dejan Lovren. One of many times that Dejan the Pebble Lovren would be embarrassed as a Liverpool player. That's the last time that they beat us at Selhurst Park. They've beaten Liverpool 4 times since, but they've all come at Anfield. I was trying to think earlier what other teams might have beaten Klopp at Anfield 3 times. Certainly in the Premier League, I'd imagine it's a very, very short list. I must actually maybe dig in and have a look at that. But at Selhurst Park, Liverpool have done well. They've won 9 and drawn 1 of the last 10 games, including an FA Cup game. So Liverpool should go into this one confident. Palace have some injury issues. Like you said, they haven't started the season particularly well. They're yet to win a game. But they do have talent. They've got a good squad. They've got a good manager. I think they will turn it around. I think they will be a comfortably mid-table team this season. But I don't fancy them to get it started in this one. I think Liverpool will go there and win. I'm going to go 2-0 to the Reds.
Yeah, I'd love another clean sheet because, well, we didn't have many last year, so it's always nice. On to the 3 o'clock kickoffs then. Arsenal hosting Southampton. I think I said the same against Leicester last week and then nearly pulled off the upset. But it can't happen 2 weeks in a row where a promoted side, especially Southampton, who are allergic to goals, I just can't see them causing Arsenal any sort of trouble.
Allergic to goals and to defending.
Well, yeah.
Important to remember.
It's a good mix.
No Basunu, yeah, exactly. Just what you want when you're newly promoted. No Basunu, no Suleiman, and no Stevens, and no Smallbone for Southampton. No Odegaard, no Zinchenko, no Tierney. Likely no Tomiyasu. And doubts over both Ben White and Juri and Timber. Now, if neither of them are fit, you'd wonder if we see the Calafiori at right back woke nonsense, which we saw in midweek in the epic bus parking adventure at home to PSG. Arsenal should win this game comfortably. They're simply a much better team than Southampton are. Like, a much better team. We're 6 games in, they've taken 13 more points already. They've scored 12 while Southampton have conceded 12. They've only conceded 5 themselves. Southampton have only scored 3. It's not a good recipe for Southampton in this one. When you're averaging 0.5 goals a game scored and conceding 2 goals a game, you're heading in one direction and it's not safety. I'm going to go for Arsenal to win this one quite comfortably because the bigger factor here as well is the naivety of Russell Martin. I could see Arsenal being in a similar position to last weekend against Leicester where they go 2-0 up. And then I could just see Southampton gifting them a couple of goals. I'm going to go Arsenal 4-0 this weekend.
Any doubts about Russell Martin surviving the international break? I think there was a few reports. I don't think they were the best sources, but it probably would be the time to make a change if they're getting battered every week.
It would. And, you have to factor in as well, this is a manager who last season is sort of an outlier in his career to date. Like, he is a talented young manager, but he'd been largely a mid-table manager, an ideas guy. That the idea of Russell Martin and what he could become was always better than what he was actually putting forward. So maybe they decide to make the change now. You would want to have someone lined up. Southampton, other than the fact it's a Premier League club, it's not a hugely appealing job right now, I don't think, given the league position and the fact that we'll be 7 games into the season. You're still a long way from January and the opportunity to improve the squad. We don't know what their finances are really like. So it is possible they make the change. If they're going to, they need to do it on Monday, like have him out and have somebody coming in. So if it is a thing where they're going to make a change, they need to be working on that right now. It would be harsh to sack him off the back of a defeat to Arsenal, though, given they're one of the teams that are favoured to win the title. But I do look at the Premier League, and I think him and O'Neill are the two probably under the most pressure, given the bottom 2.
Not Ten Hag.
See, I don't know with Ten Hag because you've got a new ownership in the door at United. Well, not new own, but new part owners in the door at United. They've
football operations. Yeah,
football operations is exactly it. They've apparently undergone a comprehensive audit of the footballing side of things. in the summer, they clearly tried to replace Eric Ten Hag. Then they made a decision to stick with him. And then they gave him 200 million to spend. And I do think they would risk looking exceptionally foolish if they fired him at this point, having backed him to that extent in the summer.
Aren't they already looking foolish?
But do they look any more foolish now than they did when they decided to keep him? I don't think they do. Yeah, has anything happened this season that we're surprised by? Not yet.
No, they're still...
Do you know, everything that we're seeing are the same issues that we saw last season, the season before.
Mm.
And
I suppose the question is then, Dave, is if this summer, how much was Ineos involved? I know we've kind of gone off on a tangent, but the games are crap, so we can skip through. But how many of the signings were Ineos signings? Like, I think Ugarte was the big Ineos signing, whereas you'd probably guess De Ligt is very much a Ten Hag signing, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, that's possible. That is very possible. De Ligt does scream Ten Hag, but then Lenny Yoro also feels like an Ineos signing.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Josh Xerxes kind of feels like a bit of both. So, and like the other thing as well is, Ineos are not particularly good at this. They haven't done a great job at Nice. They haven't done a great job at Lausanne. So it wouldn't surprise me if they were just following on a lot of the different nonsense that United have been doing for years and weren't necessarily deep diving into players. Like, remember, Matthijs de Ligt is a big name signing. Forget the fact that he's Dutch. He is a very high-profile name in the game, all because of what he did when he was at Ajax 6 years ago. He has flopped at Juve and he's flopped at Bayern. He was available at a good price. They couldn't afford to do the Branthwaite deal or couldn't find a way to get that done. And it feels like they've just looked around and seen, okay, there's a high-profile centre-back who has been really good in the past. Let's just go for him because we think we can, in a different environment, we can sort that out. I don't know. Like, the other thing with United is, Southampton and Wolves aren't going to be looking for a top-tier manager to come in. They're looking for someone that can keep them in the division. United sort of have to go for a top-tier manager because Southampton and Wolves could appoint someone now and sack them again in a year, and nobody bats an eyelid at that if it's a team battling to stay in the division. If you look at Wolves, you had Bruno Lage for just over a year, Lopetegui for less than a year, and now O'Neill. So they've already had 3 managers in 3 seasons. So if they sack O'Neill and hire whoever, and they get sacked in 12 months, no one bats an eyelid on that. If United appoint a new manager, it has to be someone with a long-term view. It has to be someone that they view can get them back among the elite. That's what they have to do the next time they appoint someone. And I don't see who's out there. Like, people will say Tuchel. I think Thomas Tuchel's a very good manager. He's also quite a short-term manager. He falls out with everybody. And he's also quite hit and miss. We saw him be very hit and miss at Chelsea. We saw him be all miss at Bayern. And he turned the job down in the summer. So what's changed for him? Maybe United are more desperate. Maybe they offer more money. But that's not a recipe for success either. And I think there will be at least a couple of calm heads within Old Trafford that will recognise that and maybe pump the brakes on it. I think United are better off waiting until a real candidate emerges.
We should thank Diogo Costa for saving him last night.
Yes, 100%. Like, it could be a thing where, like, the only alternative is, and I do think there's truth in this, I think they would like Southgate. And I think if Southgate said he was willing to take it and ready to take it, I think they'd make the move then. But we don't know what Gareth Southgate plans to do. We don't know if he feels ready to return to football. You know, he was England manager for a long time. That comes with a lot of pressure, a lot of media coverage. Maybe he's enjoying a little bit of time out of the spotlight. So
it'd only be worse with United as well.
It would. And like the other, who else said that? Graham Potter, that he's had one big job in his career and it went spectacularly wrong. So I don't think United could do that. The likes of Amorim and Alonso and these other managers that they've been linked with, like, I don't see those guys jumping ship mid-season, and I certainly don't see them jumping to United, who are on very shaky ground at the moment, and there's a lot of confusion about who's making what decisions and, you know, what the future of the club holds and what the financial situation of the club is going to be. I don't think Kieran McKenna would leave Ipswich to take it right now. So unless Southgate is willing to take it, I'm not really sure where United would turn. And I don't think Southgate would be a good appointment. I just think he's an appointment that they feel like they could control because that's who Gareth Southgate is.
Yep, absolutely. Where are we going next anyway? Well, one of the teams you mentioned in terms of sackings, Brentford hosting Wolves. Brentford, quite a few injuries, unless they've got better in the week so far. But yeah, we can't hint at Wolves' struggles there with the manager on the chopping block. Yeah, if Wolves don't win this, I think you've mentioned multiple times on multiple podcasts about Wolves' running. It does eventually get easier, but it's not anytime soon. So it feels like this is almost a must-win for them.
Yeah. When you look at Wolves' fixtures, obviously no wins thus far, just the 1 point. And when you look at their next 4 fixtures, which brings them to 10 games, Brentford away, City home, Brighton away, Palace home. I mean, what are we thinking there? Maybe 4 points? So that'd be 5 points through 10 games. That's really not going to get the job done. Now, it does get easier after that. The next 5 after that are Southampton home, Fulham away, Bournemouth home, Everton away, West Ham home. But do you back Gary O'Neill to get you your 4 points in the next 4 games and then to go and get you maybe 10 points from those 5 games? And then you've got 15 points from 15 games and you're on course to stay up at that point. Or do you decide during the international break to move on from Gary O'Neill and then potentially bring in a manager, give them these first run of games, the international break, the first run of games, City, Brighton, Wolves, almost as a settling in period, and then have them ready to strike for the 5 that follow it. And even after that, like they have Ipswich home, Leicester away, United home, like they're winnable games as well. Away to Tottenham, home to Forest. Like there's a lot of winnable games coming up for them. But they're going to have to either make a decision on whether they trust in Gary O'Neill or they don't. And they head into this game. They've got no Mascara for the season, no no Traore until the new year. Mapiu's out another month. Dawson's a doubt. Santiago Bueno should be okay. Enzo Gonzalez is out. No return date. Sasa Kalajic is out with a torn ACL. We don't know when he's coming back. So they've got their own injury problems. They're not as bad as Brentford, obviously. No Igor Thiago, no Josh Da Silva, no Johan Wissa, no Rico Henry, no Aaron Hickey, and no Gustavo Nunes. There's a lot of players to have no idea when they're coming back. But Norgard is fit, Schade is fit, and it looks like Jensen should at least make the bench, which helps. Brentford's season, been a bit of a mixed bag. They started well, then they stumbled. I think they're going to be okay. But they'll be wanting to pick up points now as well and get as many points on the board early in the season, just in case these injuries continue to snowball and they end up getting worse for them. I'm going to back Brentford to win this game at home. I'll go 2-1.
Yeah, to be fair, I think Brentford have only lost to Liverpool, City and Spurs, so they've had a decent start, but this game could be a disappointment if they lose. But moving on, we have Leicester hosting Bournemouth. Bournemouth impressive against Southampton last week or last Monday. Kind of just did the job they needed to do, kind of not hung in there, but let Southampton do their thing, and then just pretty much showed the Premier League quality they have, especially Semenyo, who's probably the one who's going to have a breakout season for them. If he
looks it, doesn't it?
Yeah, maybe for, not to be disrespectful to Bournemouth, but maybe a big move on the horizon if he keeps it up at least. But, I mean, Leicester showed something against Arsenal, but you can't be conceding, what was it, like 5.5 XG in games? I know there's a massive gap between them and Arsenal. You can't be doing that when you're in the same league as a team.
No, and like, it was a strange thing where they went 2-0 down. They looked completely outclassed. Then they got their first goal, and it seemed to spur them on, and they seemed to want to fight Arsenal at that point and go and battle. They get the equaliser, and all the momentum is with them. You're kind of feeling, if you go for this now, if you actually have a 5 or 8 minute spell here where you just attack Arsenal, they're reeling. They don't know what's going on here. You could win this game. And instead, they just retreated straight back into their shells, let Arsenal bombard them. The third goal and the fourth goal, to be fair, they're both very, very lucky for Arsenal. One is an own goal. One is a clearance that just hits Havertz and goes in. But, I mean, Arsenal fully deserved the win because they absolutely battered them, created chance after chance after chance, and just couldn't take them, and then finally got their luck, which they'd earned. Leicester, no Solozic, no Daka, no Chowdhury, and no Vestergaard. I'm not sure any of them will be playing anyway. For Bournemouth, no Tyler Adams, but he is making progress and is expected back after the international break. This is at Bournemouth. I'm just going to pick. Oh, this is at Leicester. Ooh, that makes it a little bit trickier. I might go the draw then. I might go 2-2.
Yeah, it could be fun. Could be fun. Last one before we go to a quick ad break then. Man City hosting Fulham. I mean, we were just talking before we put the recorder on. Fulham haven't been on TV since the start of the season. And it almost feels weird that they are currently sat. Where are they currently sat? 6th. I mean, very understated and maybe underrated, maybe just because not many people have seen their games.
Yeah, I do think that is part of it. I mean, when we take a look at Fulham this season, like, they lost to United 1-0 in the opening game of the season, and they were very, very unfortunate to lose that game. Like, Xerxes scores in the 87th minute.
If that was a week later, I feel like Fulham would have won.
So do I. I think they were just gearing themselves up. And then United hit them with that late sucker punch. But then after that, they beat Leicester. That was a game where they went ahead. Leicester equalised. Leicester had a spell of pressure, but Fulham found a way to win the game. From there, I've been very impressed with them. I think they've played good football. They've looked like a team that has a real belief in themselves, and they're unbeaten. You know, since that opening day defeat to United, they're unbeaten in the Premier League. They're very strong defensively. Only 5 goals conceded so far this season. They're not electric going forward, but they do have some good attacking players. I think Smith Rowe has settled in really well. There's a natural chemistry between him and Alex Iwobi. Obviously, they were at Arsenal together. And with Robinson overlapping down the left, that left side has become formidable for them. Raul Jimenez has started the season in pretty decent form. I expect big things from Rodrigo Muniz this season. So, like, I do think they can trouble teams going forward. And when we factor in that they lost, what's the centre-back's name that they lost? Tosin? In the summer?
Yes. Yeah.
I think they've adapted really well defensively as well. I mean, Joachim Andersen is a good defender. It's a new partnership, though, and they seem to have settled. They lost Paulini as well. So vital to them in midfield. Didn't really replace him. And yet, the midfield still looks pretty good. I know they got Sander Berge, but he's not the same type of midfielder. they've got Cuenca and Carlos Vinicius missing this weekend. Neither of them would be in the team anyway, but I think they're going to be back after the international break. Fulham do a brilliant job, by the way, of keeping players fit. Like, I think over the last year, there's only been like one weekend where they've had 3 or more players injured. It's normally 2 or 1 or none. So they keep their players fit very well. For City, no Oscar Bob, no Nathan Ake, which I think is an underplayed factor for them, because I think he's very, very important. No KDB, obviously. And then obviously no Rodri, who's done for the season with that ACL injury. I do fancy City to win because they're at home and because they're the better team. So, but I think Fulham will make it tough on them. I'll go 2-0 to City, but I think they'll find it pretty tough at times to break Fulham down.
Yeah, you don't see Fulham getting battered too often, do you?
No.
So yeah, I'd probably agree with you there. I think the impressive thing is you mentioned Paulinho. Like, Berg hasn't even gone straight in the team. They've just modified Pereira's role, which is, considering he was kind of a throwaway buy from United all those years ago, and now he's the hub of Fulham's team in a new role. It's a great job by Silva, I'd say. We'll go for a quick break.
Right, welcome back. So, we 5 down, 5 to go. Where are we going next?
We are going to... I forgot what West Ham Stadium is called there.
The London Stadium.
London Stadium. Yeah, I was going to call it the Olympic Stadium. West Ham hosting Ipswich, Dave. We already did the manager's bit there, but if Lopetegui loses to Ipswich of all teams...
Panic
stations.
I do think so. They got walloped in the League Cup by Liverpool. They've only won 1 game. They were very lucky to win that game as well. It was away to Palace, and Palace should have been a couple of goals clear before West Ham got their first. They look susceptible to counterattacks. They look somewhat panicked at the back. They brought in Todibo to partner Kilman, you would have thought. We haven't seen that pairing really together enough. They've jumped between a back 3 and a back 4, which suggests a manager that doesn't really know what he wants to do.
A back 3 with a midfielder in it as well.
A back 3 with a midfielder playing in the middle of it, like when you have 3 good centre-backs there already. Very, very strange. Ipswich yet to win, obviously, in the Premier League, but look, they lost to Liverpool, they lost to City, and they've drawn 4 straight since. Great result against Villa last time out. Liam Delap looks really good. He's adapted very well.
Mm-hmm.
Hutchinson looks good. I think we'll see more of Clark. I think he'll adapt.
He was excellent against Villa.
He was good against Villa. I think Calvin Phillips is starting to look a bit more like himself as well. Like, if it wasn't for the horrendous clearance by Jacob Greaves, they might well have beaten Villa. So I do think they'll go in confident they can get a result here. And when we look at the players that are out, for Ipswich, no Cahoust, Broadhead should be okay. Harry Clark is a doubt, and Donasian is out. For West Ham, you've got no Fulkrug, and Edson Alvarez is he back? Or is he suspended? I think he's back.
It should just be 1 game because it was 2 yellows.
2 yellows, yeah. So he should be back. So it's only Fulkrug that's missing. But things aren't clicking for them yet. Paqueta doesn't look himself. Kudus doesn't look himself. Bowen doesn't look himself. Now, Paqueta you can kind of understand because of all the stuff that's going on off the field with potentially a career-ending ban coming his way. Bowen, he does tend to have little periods in seasons where he doesn't quite look right, and then he'll go on a run where he gets 8 goals and 5 assists in 12 games. And all of a sudden we'll think, okay, Bowen is back playing at the right level. Kudus, I still don't think they know quite how to use him to get the best out of him. It was a problem under Moyes. I think it's still a problem under Lopetegui. But like you said, that there is pressure mounting on Lopetegui. There's already the few let's bring back Moyes shouts, which are, concerning if you're a new manager, concerning if you're a board member. There was an article in The Athletic this week about some tension that's at the club over decisions that have been made. So it will be interesting to see how this plays out. In this game, though, I do think they should win. So I'm going to back them to win 2-1, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if Ipswich get a result here. I think this Ipswich team are a good team. I think it's obviously a lot of new players thrown in at once. But we saw this happen before with clubs where they bought loads of new players and threw them in, and it was immediately a disaster. It hasn't been a disaster for Ipswich. Like, 4 straight draws is not to be sniffed at. They'll be a little bit disappointed maybe they didn't win one of them, but ultimately they've gotten some decent results here. And when you consider, it's not like they've had an easy schedule. I think they'll be quite happy with how things are going, especially when you compare them to the other 2 teams that came up with them. Like Leicester have lost 3 games. Southampton have lost 5 games. Both of them had more Premier League pedigree than Ipswich. So in terms of points, they're only 1 point ahead of Leicester. But I think if you've watched the games, you'd be more impressed by Ipswich than you would of Leicester so far.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think Ipswich have probably had a harder schedule. Leicester have had a tough enough schedule, of course, but I do think Ipswich have had the hardest schedule of the newly promoted teams through 6 games, admittedly, but they've got the most points as well. Defensively, they look the best. I think going forward, they look pretty good. If they can figure out how to get... I think they just need to go Hutchinson, Smodics, and Clark behind Delap, and that's the front 4, and you work from there. But I do think there's a lot more to get out of that team than there is out of Leicester and Southampton. So I think West Ham win this one, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if Ipswich get a result.
I'm all for Ipswich staying up. 33 points, not a single win. Just draw them
fantastic.
Yeah,
just be fantastic.
Absolutely.
Lose home and away to Liverpool. Lose home and away to City. Lose away to Arsenal. Draw with them at home and draw every other game.
Absolutely.
Perfect season.
That's the dream. That's Roy Hodgson's wet dream. Where are we up?
It might be Mikel Arteta's as well, basically.
Well, that's true.
Play a lot of the time.
Well, speaking of Roy Hodgson's wet dream, we have Everton hosting Newcastle. 2-2, 1-1. Move on.
The Anthony Gordon derby, the Duncan Ferguson derby. It does smell of a draw, doesn't it? Everton obviously got their first win last weekend. Big confidence booster. Still no Patterson, no Tremetti, no Brohia, no Coleman. But I'm not sure any of them get in the team. For the Toon, they've got a lot of injuries. No Botman, no Lascelles, no Wilson, no Isak, which is obviously massive. No Miley. Matt Target is probably out. But Dubravka, Schär, Pope, and Kieran Trippier should all be okay. Not that that's great news, because Trippier's playing really, really poorly this season. I don't know. It feels like a draw. I'll go 1-1. I don't really care either way. I don't know why it's on TV, but it's not really a game that gets me in any way excited to watch, given Isak is out, Botman is out, Guimaraes is not playing particularly well. That's Toon's 3 best players. Now, Dwight McNeil is actually quietly having a very good season for Everton so far. It's only 6 games, obviously, but he has very quietly been outstanding. 2 brilliant goals against Palace. Scored a really good goal against Villa, being let down by a lot of his teammates. Very quietly putting together a good season. I like McNeil, I always have. I'd like to see him away from Sean Dyche. I'd just like to see what he looks like under an attacking manager. I'd love to see him as a left-sided 8 in a midfield 3, like with an attacking license. I think he could do very, very well. So I do want to see how he turns out over the next couple of years. But yeah, thus far he's having a good season and he is carrying that Everton team.
Yeah, I think if you get him and then die behind, well, just if you can do anything with Calvert-Lewin, I know he scored a couple. But yeah, it's always been the issue, scoring goals. But I feel like the line behind the strike is pretty all right in the midfield. If everyone's fit, it's not too bad. But yeah, some of it's just not great, is it? But moving on to Sunday then, we have Villa hosting United, Dave. How much could you round up in terms of a bribe for Unai Emery? Just to keep someone in a job.
Yeah, just accept the draw, Unai. Yeah. Just take the draw. Look, United went there last season and got a result, so
they do have hoodoo over Villa, don't they?
They do. There is just a certain thing with certain clubs in the Premier League. But United always had that over Spurs as well. We saw Spurs go to Old Trafford last weekend and just wipe the floor with United. United have no Yoro, no Malashi and no Shaw. Doubts over Mainu and Mount. Villa, they've got their own injury issues. No Boubacar Kamara, no John McGinn. They're hopeful that Mings is back after the international break and then Kamara probably the week after that. So that's they're getting close to having everybody back. Jacob Ramsey's probably going to miss out. Leon Bailey's probably going to miss out. Onana should be fine despite going off at the week in the week. So they're hopeful he's fine. This is a big game for United. I don't think Ten Hag is necessarily likely to get sacked in the break. But if Villa were to spank them, which is very possible, with the form Watkins has found, with the form Duran is in, with the way Morgan Rogers is playing, there's absolutely a possibility that they go there and tear United into smithereens.
A scary boys. I think they have to play Harry Maguire as well.
I think they have to. I do think they have to. Up against pace. I don't like United's chances here. I'm going to go 3-1 to Villa. But if this ended 4 or 5-0, I wouldn't be at all surprised. And if that does happen, then I think he has to go.
Yeah, it's untenable.
I think you have to go. You have to go to Southgate with your cap in your hand and say, "Look, just take it till the end of the season." Because he's not I don't think he should be the long-term manager. But if he could get you to the end of the season and you could at least settle everything else down and you could start to plot a course for the future and figure out, first of all, who do we want as manager? You're not going to get Alonso, but is it an Amorim? Is it a Sebastian Hoeneß? Who is it? Who do we want as manager? And once we have that in mind, let's approach them quietly through back channels and see if there's interest. And I think if United offered it to Sebastian Hoeneß at the end of the season, I think he'd be interested. And from there, you can start to plot, who do we want player-wise? Who can come in? What style of play is he going to play? So what players do we need? Who fits, who doesn't fit? And you can start to put together proper lists of players that will fit what the manager will need. And then the end of the season, you thank Southgate for his efforts, send him on his way with a nice gold watch and a handshake. You announce your new manager and you go all in on getting him what he needs. And you don't put pressure on him. When I say all in, I don't mean financially, because I'm not talking about going and buying, 300 or 400 million pound players. I'm talking about going all in on what's on the stylistic types of players he wants and clearing out the players that are not going to work under him. And even if you have to gut things, and even if you have to say we're going to have a year or two of pain here, or we're finishing ninth.
I think that's what Arsenal did really well under Arsenal.
That is what Arsenal did. It is what Arsenal did. And Hoeneß is a much bigger managerial prospect at this moment in time than Arteta was before Arsenal appointed him. He's already done a really good job with Stuttgart. Arteta hadn't managed before he got the Arsenal job. So you could take their approach. It would obviously lead to some cry-arsing among your fan base. You just have to ignore that and focus on the long-term health of the club and ridding yourself of overpriced, overpaid, underperforming players that have plagued United since Ferguson left and rebuilding young. Now, the alternative plan, which I've seen floated, is that they appoint Max Allegri and just fully commit to terrorism football and just sort of scrape into the Champions League every year and sort of ride it out that way.
Does I not remember the two managers after Moyes.
I know. This is the thing. You've done the big name hire. And like Max Allegri at this point is very similar to what Mourinho was when they appointed him. Like quite negative, fundamentally sound, obviously. Principles of defense first, don't concede goals, but ultimately nobody's having fun watching that team play.
Get Rafa in. Let Rafa finish the circle of hate for Liverpool.
Can you imagine? Imagine the meltdowns. It'd be brilliant.
Just on it, I mean, one of the, you mentioned Allegri as one. The other rumour is Ruud van Nistelrooy's kind of been picked as his assistant to eventually replace him. Now, he obviously was the PSV manager 2 years ago, 3 years ago, however long ago it was. Any similarities, like Arteta was an assistant, then got obviously the Arsenal job. I know it was at Man City, but as a prospect manager, any hope for United with him?
I don't know. I mean, he managed one season with PSV. He was the academy manager for a year. The results were not great, but that's fine. That's not what you're looking for at the academy level. He got the first team job. He won the Dutch Cup. To his credit, he did win the Dutch Cup. But they got smoked in the league by Arne Slot's Feyenoord. And then he left in weird circumstances. Like, nobody was expecting him to resign, and he just quit and walked out the door. And then they ran away with the league last year.
Then PSV haven't lost a game since.
So it's a weird thing. I don't know what to make of him as a manager. I really don't know what to make of him as a manager. There's just not nearly big enough a sample size. And I don't really think working under Ten Hag is a great apprenticeship.
It's not Pep Guardiola, is it?
It's not, it's not. And like, it's not even just, it's not Pep, but even just, you look at the time, Mikel Arteta was working under Pep for multiple years, not just for, it's been a couple of weeks or a couple of months at this point for Ruud under Ten Hag. Like, Arteta joined City in July of 2016 and he left in December of 2019. So basically 3.5 years working under Pep, and not just Pep. Like, it's the other coaches that have been there as well. It's the likes of Dominic Torrent. It's the likes of Brian Kidd. It's the likes of
Rodolfo Borrell.
Yeah. Maresca was there for a couple of different periods. Like, all of them working together, all of them exchanging ideas. A lot of young coaches have, even in the City Academy, he would have had a lot of interactions with, because that's one of the things he was focused on was player development. So it is just, it's not the same type of learning curve that you're going to get. I think if they appoint Van Nistelrooy, they're basically writing off the season and saying, look, that's fine, because they'd be doing the same appointing Southgate. You'd basically be saying to them, look, just get us till the end of the season, and then we'll reassess. But you're telling them that, like, oh yeah, do well and we might consider you, but you're really starting a managerial search. And if his name comes up, and if he profiles well, and if, but what you can't do is you can't be influenced by the results. You cannot be influenced by the results, because that's what happened with Ollie.
One win over City and it is, let's go.
That's the thing, and that's the type of stupid thing that they would do. They need to completely ignore what he's doing on the pitch if they're going to consider him, and they need to look at everything else. They need to look at how he's conducting coaching, because that's more important. They need to be monitoring his interactions with players. They need to be having discussions with him about his tactical plan. They need to be talking to him about the profiles of players he'd like to bring in, and ensuring that he ticks every box. Forget the results. If the results are crap, but you watch the coaching and it's impressive, and you watch the man management and it's impressive, and he knows who he wants to be and what he wants to be and what type of players he needs. If he ticks all of those boxes, that's far more important for the long term than the short-term results would be. With Ollie, they went the other way. The coaching was dreadful. The man management was not good. He had no idea what type of players he wanted for his style of football. But the results were good to begin with, so they gave him the job permanently. It was a catastrophic decision, ultimately. I wouldn't be looking at Van Nistelrooy personally, but maybe they would. I think they're going to lose this weekend, though.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with you there. Chelsea, Nottingham Forest, this one's not on TV. Do we have to start being more positive about Chelsea, Dave? I know the attack is on fire at the minute. I know you have some question marks defensively, probably more so the keeper, as well as the defence. But the attack's on fire. I think quite a lot of people had question marks about Maresca because he wasn't well loved at Leicester, but he's done a fantastic job getting the best out of Sancho really quickly. Palmer's continued being excellent. Nicholas Jackson looks slightly better, I'd say.
Yeah, looks more purposeful. I mean, the thing is with Palmer, I think he's got... Let me just check this so I'm right. Like, he's getting, obviously, a lot of hype and a lot of praise at the moment, and 4 goals and a half is outrageous. For this season, he's got 10 goals and assists, so 6 goals, 4 assists. All in the Premier League. 8 of them came in 2 games. 4 against Wolves and 4 against Brighton. So in the other 2 games, he's only got 2. Which, when you look at it that way, is not as impressive. He's got 2 games where he's basically stat padded. Now, they do look much better going forward. Brighton gifted them 3 of the 4 goals, though. And they, likewise, gifted Brighton 2 goals. I think they look really poor defensively. I do. I think they look really poor defensively. Now, by the numbers, it's not as bad, because they've only conceded 7, which isn't dreadful. They scored 15, which is the most in the league. And maybe that's what they're going to do, is go that kind of blitzkrieg mentality, the Brendan Rodgers approach when things were going wrong at Liverpool. He lumped entirely, but I don't think you can do that in the Premier League and be successful. Not at this stage. They should win this game, though. I mean, Forest are a decent side this year, only the 1 defeat. That was last weekend, obviously. But they're a mid-table team at best. Like, their maximum level is mid-table. Chelsea have the talent to be a top 4 team. I mean, the squad is outrageously deep. They've got 5 players at every position. They're getting fitter. No Reece James, no Kellyman, and likely no Carney Chukwuemeka this weekend, but everybody else is fit. For Forest, no Danilo, no Sangaré, but everyone else is fit, and Gibbs White is back from suspension, which is huge for them. It's at home. Chelsea should win this game. Like, they should win this game. There's no excuse not to. The only thing that would make me pause there is that Palace went there and got a draw, and Forest are a good defensive side. Like, Nuno has them set up well.
Especially for the pack of the midfield, like they've been doing.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if he took a similar approach as he did at Anfield, and then later on brings on the 2 wingers. And he has a Wani back now, which he didn't have at Anfield, I don't think. Wani played against us. So he does have that extra gear to bring on up front, that more pacey runner type of centre forward. I'm going to go for the Palace, for the Chelsea win, but it's not a banker. It's not a banker by any stretch, but I'll go 2-1 to Chelsea.
Yeah, I could see that being a tense game, I think. I don't think this one will be. No defence, just vibes. Brighton are hosting Spurs. I mean, Brighton won't be starting Adam Webster. I think that's for a certain. When Spurs have been really good since that tight cup win over Coventry, was it? Just came to have really clicked since then. Defensively look a lot better. And Brennan Johnson's became the best player in the world. we will call him Almiron for this one, where he did it last year.
It is that Almiron kind of run, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know what's funny, is that people slate Spurs defensively. They've conceded the same number of goals as Arsenal. Only Liverpool have conceded less goals in the Premier League this season. So they're not as bad defensively as people make them out to be. They do play a high-risk brand of football. There's no doubt about that. But you look at the results, a draw away to Leicester, they hammer Everton, they lose a game they should have won against Newcastle, they lose a game they should have won against Arsenal. Now, based on what was going into the game, they should have won it. The way the game played out, the result was the right result.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a lot of question marks, a lot of doubts at that point. 4 games in, a lot of people were asking questions. But like you said, they scraped by Coventry, they beat Brentford coming from behind, they beat Qarabag with 10 men for the majority of the game, they hammered United, they beat Ferencváros there last night. They're scoring goals, they're finding ways to win, they're playing good football. This is a tough game though, because Brighton play good football as well. We're in good form prior to the game against Chelsea. But they are actually not good defensively. I don't think Spurs are great defensively, but they're not as bad defensively as people make them out to be. I think Brighton are outright bad defensively. And the midfield doesn't have proper defensive structure as yet. The centre-backs are not good. The goalkeeper's good. If it's Kadioglu and a Estupiñán, a fullback, they're both very good, but they're both primarily going forward mentality rather than defensive mentality. So you've got to strengthen what you're doing in the centre of the park to allow that. If they keep Weaver and Baliba in, that will help that massively. Those two just need reps together. But I do think that can be a very, very solid pairing for them. This is a tough game. I think it's going to be one of the most exciting games of the season. And it could go in any way. It could be 4-0 to Brighton. It could be 4-0 to Spurs. It could be 4-4. It could be 0-0, but a really exciting 0-0 or an exciting 1-1. I don't think there's any chance this is a boring game. I'm going to go for the draw, but I'll go 2-2. I do think it's going to be a fun game.
Yeah, I'd agree. And that was our last game.
I'm just noticing Son is ruled out for Spurs. Brighton have no João Pedro, so that kind of evened itself up. Brighton do have a bunch of injury issues at the moment, but I still think 2-2. I'll go 2-2, and we'll leave it there, and that will do us for the week. I'll be back later this evening, obviously, with 2 Footed Extra. But thank you for listening, as always, and as I said at the start of the show, today's episode was brought to you by Sky Bet. So please remember that if you are gambling, it is for 18 and older. And check out begambleaware.org if you have questions or issues with gambling. Take care of yourselves. See you Monday. Bye-bye.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Kamala Harris was raised by a working mother who instilled in her a passion for justice, equality, and standing up for your community. That's why as district attorney, she pioneered a program to give nonviolent drug offenders a second chance. And as president, Kamala Harris will continue fighting for us. Because rents, groceries, and utility bills are still too high. Harris's plan to fix it? Build more homes to lower prices and make the wealthy and billionaires pay their fair share in taxes. As president, Kamala Harris will always have our backs.
I'm Kamala Harris, candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Harris for President.